Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Saleha Afridi, and I'm going to be with you for the next hour. My name is Dr. Saleha Afridi, and I am a clinical psychologist and the managing director of the Lighthouse Arabia. I'm very happy to be here, although this topic is a little bit difficult, but I think we're going to make the most of this hour. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you guys some thoughts that I have, some tips that I have for working mothers. Just as a brief introduction, I am a mother of 4 children myself, and I also happen to manage a business called the Lighthouse Arabia. So I really understand the struggle of the working mother. And so I will share with you things that I've had to learn how to do very quickly, but also things that I know that have worked for people around the globe, actually. So before we begin, I think it's really important for me, by the way, I'm going to be answering questions at the end of this, so please feel free to leave your questions at the end. But I'm just going to go ahead and start with the content now. I think it's really important for us to understand why is it that we're feeling the way we're feeling. You know, with most of us are feeling very nervous, scared, anxious, worried, and I think these are all very normal feelings to experience. I think it's very important to name that feeling and to just say that this is happening, and to be able to be owning some of those feelings, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But first, to understand, why is it that I'm feeling all this? Because what we can understand, then we can manage. I think it's also important to say that, you know, we went from just living a normal life, the way we've always lived our life. We go out to work, we have kids, they go to school, we socialize, we, you know, have our friends, we, you know, go out, we travel, and we had all of these different things that we were doing, and that we were not able to sort of put our minds, it moved so quickly for us to be able to shift from going and doing a whole life to then being indoors and, you know, having to experience this COVID crisis. So it's a very normal feeling for you to be experiencing anxiety. But I think as working mothers, we have a very different ask of us as well. We're having to balance childcare, homeschooling, self-care, you know, work. Especially if you're a working mother, I think that adds another layer to the whole experience. So I think this is a very difficult time. We went from just going to living a day-to-day life to having to literally do a whole paradigm shift and change the way we live our life. And so someone just asked me, what's the title of the session? The title of the session is really for working parents, working mothers, but generally speaking, I think everyone can benefit with some of the things that I might be able to share. So I will try to stay focused on those 2 things, and you guys are more than welcome to ask me questions towards the end, because I can't like read the things and then say the same things at the same time. So I will do my very best. So I wanted to share a few things with you that I think will help you in the next 40 minutes or so. Okay, so the first thing is, it's very, very important as a mother, as a parent, as a person, for you to know that there's a mindset with which you need to go into this experience with. And your mindset will determine your experience. I think if you are going in with a mindset of perfectionism, that everything has to be perfect, and my kids have to be at the top of their class, and I have to have the perfect, you know, working space, and I have to have the perfect home, and I have to cook the perfect food, and everything has to be perfect, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for you. So readjusting your expectations is going to be very important part of that mindset. The second part of that mindset is the language with which you speak. If you are using terms like social isolation and social distancing, and you're saying things in front of your children like, oh, we have to stay home, or we're in lockdown, or we're not able to leave the house, then you're actually encouraging a narrative of powerlessness. But if you say things like, I get to stay home, we get to stay home, we get to stay together, we get to stay safe, we have to keep 2 meters apart from people, that language of social isolation and social distancing is actually really triggering and fearful. So I want you to change your language when you speak with your children and when you speak internally also, that I get to stay home. I choose to stay home. The language of I get to is a language of gratitude. The language of I choose to is the language of power. So you don't have to do anything. We get to do this. And I think you will literally start to frame and shape the narrative of your whole family. And I know I've been doing this. And to some degree, it feels like we're living almost in a little bit of a bubble here at home, because the language is so grateful and the narrative is so grateful that yes, we are going through a difficult experience. And yes, there are many things that we're not able to do, but there are so many things that we are able to do, we get to do together. Another thing when it comes to mindset is really about using a mantra that says, this is happening for me, not to me. When it says, oh my God, look at all these things that are happening to me, look at everything that is happening to me, we feel like a victim. But when we say things like, this is happening for me, all of a sudden we shift into a growth mindset. The growth mindset is actually thinking, what am I going to take from this? Why is this happening for me? If something was to happen for me, why would that be happening? What am I supposed to learn from this experience? How am I supposed to grow from this experience? So I challenge you to shift your mindset, not to go through this, but to grow through this. And the whole family will follow. The second thing I would recommend as a family is for us to change our relationship with difficult feelings. As a mother, what you do and how you manage your anxiety and how you manage your stress will also be played out by your children. Your children will do as you do, not as you say. So if you say, be calm, if you say, be relaxed, if you say everything is okay, but you yourself are feeling so frantic and so stressed, your children will feel stressed and frantic too. And so I want us to create a different relationship with difficult feelings, and to know that part of a happy life, part of a good life is difficult feelings. And we're just not going to fight with them anymore. We're not going to fight the fact that this is a difficult experience. I'm not expecting you to be the happiest that you've ever been, and you shouldn't either. But you know what? It's one thing to say that, yes, this is not how I wanted it to be. This is not how I wanted my 2020 to be. This is not how I wanted to spend my spring break, or spend this school year, or have this work project go. This is not what I wanted. However, it's tolerable, it's acceptable, and it's okay. So you make a little bit of space inside of yourself for difficult feelings, and know that with good comes bad and with bad comes good, and it's all part of the same life. And so how can you be open and willing to difficult emotions? That's really going to determine how you go through them. If you constantly are resisting it, and you have this, airy-fairy expectation of everything has to be perfect, and my life has to be perfect, and my emotions have to feel good all the time, then you're really going to be struggling a lot more. So willingness and acceptance is another thing that I would really recommend that we do. The third thing I would recommend as parents, and this is a little bit of a longer segment, is routine. Now, I know that there's a lot of parents that are saying, this is a hard time for parents, and this is a hard time for children. And so, you know what? Let's just see this as like an extended weekend or a long holiday or something. And I would really advise you against it, because routine is the antidote to anxiety. Routine is the antidote to stress. Routine is the antidote to all sorts of other difficult experiences or feelings that we're experiencing due to uncertainty. So we want to give them a sense of predictability. We want to give them a sense of safety. And we want to feel safe. We want to know we can expect. Every day something is changing in our life. Every day we're worried about other things. However, if you have a routine in place, it's going to make it a lot less stressful for your family and for you. So what should that routine look like? The routine should be that everyone wakes up and goes to bed at the same time. You should make sure that everyone takes a shower and changes out of their pajamas every day. And I know that this sounds a little bit rudimentary, but it really is important that when kids go to school and when you go to work, that you dress up as if you're going to work, because your clothing will send a signal to your body or to your mind. And it will actually tell your mind that this is where you're supposed to be. And so I know that, in the ancient days with the samurais, there used to be a whole battle. There used to be a ceremony that they used to engage in. And that ceremony was to wear the armor so they could go off to battle. It wasn't because they couldn't throw on their clothes very quickly and go off, but it was really about shifting into a mindset. And the mindset is going to be very important. And so your clothes are going to determine your mindset. So if you're wearing pajama bottoms and then your dress shirt, then you're only going to show up half to work. And if you are wearing your pajamas when you are sitting at school for your children, they're not going to fully be engaged. So make sure that there's a routine in place that requires them to change out of their clothes. I actually expect my children to wear something that is related to school. So it can be their gym uniform, it can be actually their school uniform, but this is what they wear when they actually go to school. And they report to their workstation, which is another thing that I would recommend for working mothers and for children who are homeschooling, to have a workstation. No, they cannot work in their bed. No, they cannot work at the dining table unless you've converted the dining table into a workstation. But having small desks, it doesn't require a big space, but having a place where you come and you report to work is going to be very important. One of the reasons it's going to be important is going to be productivity, because you're just going to be more productive because you're showing up to a place dressed in a certain way, going to work or going to school. But another reason why it's going to be important is because it's going to be sending signals to your brain that this is what is expected from you. So it's very important that you have workstations. Everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. Everyone is dressed the part, and that workstation is in its place. If you can, which I recommend, if your children are not used to having a desk in their room, then I would really recommend having a desk outside of the room. Now, the house doesn't have to be very big. One of my daughters is almost like in a hallway type of place, because the room she is associating with her sleep and her rest. And so I want her to report to another place. And so she's going to move out and sit in a desk in this sort of space that we've created for her. So if you can move the room out, if you can move the desk out of the room, if that's not what they're used to doing. Another thing I would recommend, another reason why I would recommend that having a work outfit and school outfit and a school place is because you could burn out, because we are so used to having our home be a place for rest and recreation. And now that we're making it a workstation and a school, then all of a sudden we won't know the boundaries between work and life. They will be very blurred. And so it's very important that we create these kinds of spaces and places and signals for the body for it to actually to shift. Sorry, I'm gonna move this a little bit. The next thing I would recommend when it comes to part of their routine is to make sure that they are engaged in exercise every day. Now, exercise is an action. Actions counteract fear. And that's what we need to do right now. We need to feel a sense of control. And there's a lot of energy inside of them also. So it's very important that we have them move around. So you will never see me in a Fitbit, but now, because of this COVID experience that we're going through, my whole family has put on a Fitbit, and my whole clinic has put on a Fitbit. And there is a challenge about how many steps we are going to be taking and how much exercise we are going to be getting and how much sleep we're going to be getting. So make sure that there's some activity, and you can make it fun, and while the weather is nice, make sure that you go outside if you have a garden. If you don't have a garden, we literally are walking around our house when we take phone calls or when we're studying. They're finding a way to get their steps in. So make sure that you have fun with that. And make sure that there's exercise as part of their routine. And make sure you also feel that way too. Another thing I would recommend as part of the routine is to make sure that you have fun. Because, this is a difficult experience, but children are not going to remember, how they did on that one math test during, 2020 March. But they are going to remember how they felt during this experience, and if they felt contained, and if they felt loved, and if they had fun, if they were connected to each other, they were connected to you. That is going to be really important. So we've brought back the old board games, and we're playing board games. Then there's Pictionary, and there's all kinds of things that you can do. There's also an app for people who are a little bit further away from their family. It's called House Party, and you can actually go online and play games with each other. They provide you with the games. There's trivia, and you can actually have a lot of fun with that. So make sure that the routine includes a good exercise regimen. It requires workstations. You're changing out of your work clothes into your leisure clothes when the workday is done, and that you are having fun. I would also like to highlight the importance of sleep. Now, every screen that we're looking at, and you are looking at a screen right now, and I'm looking at a screen right now, all of these screens emit a blue light. This blue light is the same light that the surgeon has over their head that tells the brain, do not emit melatonin into this brain. That light keeps us alert. It makes us engaged all day long. However, when we go to bed at night, it can take the body and it can take the mind up to 2 hours for the signals to be, oh wait, it's dark now, so now you need to go to bed. And so now I can start to release melatonin. So it's very, very, very important that you get either blue light blocking glasses, or you get blue light protectors for all of your computers, because it puts a lot of strain on your eyes. By the end of the day, you're exhausted, you're moody, you're cranky, you don't want to talk to anybody. And so it's very important that you get blue light protecting glasses. You can get them on Amazon. There's all sorts of companies that make them. But if you don't want to wear glasses, glasses are good for when you're like looking at your phone at night. But if you're working all day long at a computer, then I would just recommend getting a computer blue light protection screen. They're not expensive, and I would do that for all of your children and for you as well. So make sure that you're guarding your sleep. The sleep is the most important thing that you can do for your mind and body. And if your sleep cycle is off and your sleep regimen is off, I can assure you that you are not going to mentally feel healthy or well. So guard your sleep, and make sure that your children are going to bed at the same time every night and waking up at the same time every night, or every morning. That routine is going to be very, very important for them. And that routine is very important for their mental health. So I know that we're talking about mental health, and we're talking about emotional health, and why is she telling me about sleep, and why is she telling me about some of these things, but sleep is very important. And I know that some of you guys are mentioning here that you can change the blue lights on your phone. However, it doesn't block it all the way. So some Macs have some dimming of lights, and it changes it to yellow. It doesn't actually block it 100%. So you want to try to get the blue light screen protector as well, because we're spending so much time on the screen. The next thing I would recommend, and this is a little bit of a harder one for moms than it is for others, is that make sure that you take care of yourself. Now, there's something that happens in the programming of a mother that they just feel like they have to take care of everyone else. And then they feel guilty when they take some time out for themselves. Oh, I could be taking care of my son right now. I could be teaching him something. I could be doing something. I could be cooking something. I could be with my husband. But when you do that, you actually are doing them a disservice, and you are doing yourself a disservice. As the leader of the home, as the leader of these children that you are trying to, get through this difficult experience, the leader himself, herself, has to be in good shape. And so you need to take care of yourself as a duty to them. And so when we travel on airlines, when we used to be able to travel on airlines, they used to say that, in case of an emergency, there will be an oxygen mask that drops. If that oxygen mask drops, make sure you put it on yourself first, and then you put it on people that are the elderly and your children. Now, as a mother, that sounds horrifying. What do you mean I should save myself first and then save my children? But it's going to be very important that you save yourself, and you feed yourself, and you nurture yourself, and you take care of yourself, because then you are able to take care of them as well. You are able to take care of them better. So make sure that you're doing things for yourself that are taking care of yourself. And that could be anything. For moms, I always speak in the 3 S's. I talk about systems, I talk about support, I talk about self-care. And so systems need to be in place when it comes to just your routine. And what kind of systems can you put in place that are going to make sure that things are predictable, but also that, if there's something that's happening every single day, then make it a system. So, for example, if there's a table that needs to be set, take a picture of the table, make sure you set it this way. That way you're not using a lot of your energy saying the same thing again and again and again. That can be very draining. So make sure that you're doing that as well. Making a system for everything that is a repeat. I would also say that communicate with the people in your life, whether it's your husband, whether it's your family members that are living with you or that are living far from you. What do you need from them? And so there could be a digital date that you set with, your child and his grandfather every 4 p.m. And during that digital date, you have gone and you've just taken some time for yourself and rested. Once the school day is over, then you can go and rest a little bit before the night shift begins, and then the parenting and the caring and the feeding and all of that stuff begins. So find ways where you can use your family members as support, even if they're not living with you and next to you. It will be very, very important to tap into your support system. I would also say that if you are communicating with your husband and your partner about what you need, find a way to say, I need this from you, rather than shaming and blaming. You never do this for me, and you never think about me, and you never, because that actually will start to build resentment in the couple. And so I want you to protect that relationship by just, in a time when it's calm and you guys are not, in an argument, I want you to say, hey, listen, now we've done this for 2 weeks, and I've come up with these few things that I need some help on. Is there any way you can help me with this and that? And I'm gonna call my friend for this and that. And that way you can actually really get the support from your husband as well as your family members. Make sure you ask for what you need, and there is no harm in doing that. I would also recommend that you make sure that your house is tidy. Make sure that your rooms are clean and not messy. When we're living in a house all day long, we want to be in an environment that is conducive to our mental health. If our space is chaos, then our internal space is going to be chaos also. So it's going to be very, very important that you keep your house nice and tidy and clean and decluttered. Use this time to go through closets and give out things and get rid of things, and make your space a place you actually love being in. Redecorate your room if you can. Repurpose your house. There's no guests coming. You don't need a guest room. Maybe you can make it a home gym, and that you can actually use it to actually have some yoga mats and put on, you know, a TV where you can actually do some exercises with your children. So there's a way to repurpose your room, but making sure that it's tidy and clean and decluttered, because you want to imagine that you're going into a spa, right? And in the spa, the lighting matters, and then your aromas matter. So what kind of scent is in the air? What kind of stuff is around you? You're gonna feel a lot more anxious and a lot more nervous if all of that stuff is around you and it's not an environment that is calm and settling, right? And so, the last thing, and then I'm gonna leave it open for some questions for you guys, is that, actually I'll say two more things. I would say that remember that human beings, we are wired for detecting threat. And so if we know that our wiring is to detect threat, we would not, first of all, we would not have made it this far as a human being, as human beings, as a species, if we did not have this fight or flight detecting of threat wiring in our brain. So if we know that this is the wiring in our brain, then we're going to really have to focus on figuring out how to remain positive during this time. So I'm going to do a little bit more of a 101 just really quickly on anxiety, just so you guys understand, as mothers, as children, as mothers who are looking after children, that it's going to be important that you don't think that this is going to be an anxiety-free time. Because I want you to think about anxiety as being on a spectrum, right? You have low anxiety and then you have high anxiety. Usually the spectrum is bigger, but I'm on a phone, so imagine that there's a spectrum. And you have low anxiety and you have high anxiety. If you had low anxiety, you would be going to the grocery store and you would be high-fiving everyone without your gloves on, without your mask on, and you would say, you know what, it's fine, I'm not gonna get sick, it's fine, and I'm not gonna get arrested or whatever. Because that's what low anxiety does. Our anxiety actually keeps us sort of in check. But if you had too much anxiety, you would be going out and buying all sorts of toilet paper and food and preparing, and that would be too much anxiety. So what we want is a little bit of anxiety, and I want us to make a little bit of space for that anxiety there. Anxiety informs us, but it doesn't control us. It tells us how we need to be, but we choose how to respond rather than react to this constant fight or flight mode, right? We don't want to be in this fight or flight mode all the time. And so it's very important to have a relationship with your anxiety. And for the mothers, I want you to think that, yes, my child is sad. Yes, my child is worried. Yes, my child feels stress. And I want to eliminate that, because instinctively we want to eliminate every problem that my child has. I want him to have a very, very happy childhood. But you do your child a disservice when you eliminate every obstacle out of their life, because then they don't know how to have obstacles. Life is full of obstacles. Life is full of struggle. Life is full of hardship. And maybe they won't have a COVID happen to them in their lifetime, but maybe there will be some other pain that they have to endure. So we want to give them small doses of anxiety, small doses of hardship. And then, yeah, you know what? It's not how we want it to be, but how can we make the most of this period? And so you know how we take our children for inoculations. We give them vaccinations to inoculate them from polio and MMR and all of these things when they're little babies. We give them vaccinations because then the body, and the vaccination is a small dose of the disease itself. When we give people the flu shot, we give them a small dose of the flu, and that way the body builds up the immunity for it to say, okay, when it gets faced with that flu shot, then, or when it gets faced with polio or chicken pox, then it knows that it has the immunity to fight it. So we inoculate our children. The same thing goes with hardship. When we give them small doses of hardship, we actually are giving them a muscle that is building up inside of them, resilience that is building up inside of them. So no, we don't want to eliminate every problem that comes in our child's way, because then when the problems come and we're not there, they're not going to know how to deal with that problem. So as a mother, as a parent, it is our duty to allow our children to experience some hardship and then be there with them and say, you know what, everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be all right. And that this is a difficult time. And you know what, we're together and we're safe and we're so grateful. So make sure that your relationship to anxiety changes a little bit through this experience. And that would be the biggest gift ever. And that would be the biggest transformation ever, actually. That if you were to say, wow, I am, my relationship with anxiety changed. I no longer want to get rid of it, because it's not about getting rid of anxiety. Whatever you resist will persist. And if you resist anxiety and you keep pushing, and I don't want to be sad and I don't want to be anxious and I just want to be happy all the time, if you keep resisting it, it will keep persisting. And so I want you to think about anxiety as like hands, right? It's when we have too much anxiety, we can't see beyond our hands. It's literally our hands blocking. And this is anxiety blocking us from what we truly believe. Now, we don't want to cut off our hands. We don't want to get rid of our anxiety. We actually want to put our hands to our side. We want our hands to be able to help us, which is what we want anxiety to be able to do. But we don't want it to block what is important to us. We don't want it to block and get in the way of our values. So how do you live with anxiety? How do you live with worry? How do you live with difficulty? That's what we want to get out of this. And if we truly do that, then we would really grow from this experience and not just go through it. And so would our children. So I hope that these tips were helpful. Remember, it's about a mindset. It's about an acceptance and willingness of difficult emotions. It's about having a routine, showing up, dressing up, making sure that your space is tidy, making sure that you're taking care of yourself, making sure that you give yourself permission to go hide in the closet if you need to, just to get away from everyone, making sure you give yourself permission to ask your partner, your family members, nanny, whoever, for help, so you can support each other. And that we're all in this together. And in the first time, I think in human history, we can say that every single person in the world is experiencing what you're experiencing to one degree or another. So, you know what? We're literally all in this together. So I hope that this was helpful. And now I'm able to take some questions. I have about 20 minutes or so to take some questions for you, from you guys. I think I had someone ask about sleep, but I don't know. It was moving a little bit too quickly. Do you guys have any questions for me? Thank you. Thank you for all the wonderful comments. If you don't have questions, I'll just keep talking. Actually, I would like to say that there are people that are going to go through this experience, and everything I'm saying to them may not help, and that you might need to seek professional help. And so how do you know when that normal anxiety that informs us become clinical, right? Because we don't want to let it go too far, especially if you're a working mother, or you're a mother, or you're a parent, or you're a caretaker. You don't want to let it go so far that you end up being in a total panic and a total, anxious state, or a totally depressed state. We really want to find a way to get help before we do that. So there's a lot of online therapy services that are available right now. You don't have to leave your house. I know the Lighthouse Arabia has therapy services, but that's just one of many amazing clinics in Dubai and in the UAE. Every platform actually, every clinic actually is able to support you with online therapy and online psychiatry. So I want you to reach out and get help before it gets too bad. And I know that there's a stigma associated with getting mental health support. But I would want us to work through that and get over that, especially during such time, because there are some people that are really suffering, and you do not need to suffer. Struggle, okay. Struggle is okay. We all will struggle, but you do not need to suffer. And so get help, get professional help. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be in therapy for the next 7 years. It's just maybe the next few weeks that you just have someone that you can speak to who's a professional that will be able to help guide you. I always tell people, I have a psychologist, my children have a psychologist, my husband has a psychologist, and we just believe in preventative care rather than treatment, because prevention is a lot easier to manage it and tackle it before it becomes a bigger issue. When you have to work on treatment, it becomes a whole lot longer of an experience. So make sure you get in. An early intervention is as good as prevention. So get in and get some support. Learn how to cope with difficult feelings if that is something that is hard for you to do. Another thing I would recommend is, it's a little bit hard, but meditate if you can. And if you can't meditate, you know what? Don't meditate. Don't put that pressure on yourself. But if you can, there's some wonderful apps. I give a lot of those suggestions on my Instagram account. My Instagram account being Dr. Saleha Afridi. I think it's tagged on the Happy UAE account as well under this, the poster that described what this talk was. So I think it's important to have some of these apps support you. But if you can't meditate, I would really recommend that you don't think about the future. Just if you can't be in the now, just don't be in the future. Just be as close to now as possible. And one of the fastest ways you can get to as close to now as possible is to say, what's the smallest step I need to take right now? The smallest step. And that for me might be that I need to clean my desk. And then I need to go check on my kids. And then I need to make sure that the dinner is ready. Then I need to make sure that they get to bed on time. Then I need to make sure that I read my book. And next thing you know, you've taken small, tiny steps and you've gone through one more day. And then, you've enjoyed those little moments rather than thinking about, oh my God, how long is this going to go on? When is this going to end? Why am I in this place? Why is this happening to me? Again, think. You don't know the answers to this, and no one knows. No one knows. All we know is that we live in a country that we can be so grateful for, and it's keeping us safe, and it's working day and night, literally, to make sure that the environment is clean and that we can go to the grocery store and we can get what we need. And so there's so much to be grateful for. So just stay as close to the moment, because no one knows what the future holds. What's the smallest step I need to take right now is going to be a very important mantra that you can have. Where are the fathers in this? The fathers are right next to the mothers, actually. Probably stuck at home with the mothers too. Not stuck at home, but also at home. But I think the fathers and the mothers, if they work together, this can be a very great experience for the family. I think there's just role expectations if we're talking about, I think there's a lot of mothers who take on a lot of ownership and responsibility. And I think that was historically because fathers maybe were going out to work and home. So I think with fathers and mothers, there's going to have people that are living together and working together, especially if there's two people like working mothers and working fathers. Communication is going to be very important. So every single thing that I have said today is going to be important for fathers as well, because we're all in this place together and we're in this space together. So there are times when the father needs to take a very important meeting and he needs to lock himself up in that room, and then you are going to go as the mother or the wife, whoever, you're going to go and you're going to sort of manage the rest of it. So it would be very important that communication is going two ways, and dad is asking mom for what she needs and mom is asking dad for what she needs. And so it's going to be, that's going to make this experience a lot more healthier. It's just going to be a lot more easier for the family as well. And I think, I know as a working mom, I don't think my kids have seen so much of me day in and day out, so much of my husband day in and day out. And so I think when you are coordinating your schedules, make sure that you don't work this whole 9 to 5 thing. It's never going to work, obviously. So make sure that you're coordinating your schedules, maybe even with dad and mom, you know, where dad is in an important meeting, make sure that mom doesn't schedule an important meeting at the same time so one of you guys can be with the kids. It would also be important that you space it out. So I try to do 1 hour with like a 30-minute break, and then I move around. I make sure everybody is okay, everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then I come back for the hour. I try to limit it to 45 minutes, 30 minutes. If it's not a meeting that needs to happen on Zoom, I will actually walk while I do the meeting so I can get my steps in, because my kids are really, you know, way ahead of the game with me on this one right now. So if a meeting does not have to be scheduled where you're looking at a screen, make sure that you do some phone calls so you can get some walk in as well. The advice would also, I mean, this applies, again, I would say the same thing that I'm saying to you as working mothers and fathers, I would say to a 20-year-old, I would say to a 14-year-old. I think it applies across the board. I think with mothers, we just have a lot of responsibility because we have childcare, we have homeschooling, we have work, and then we have self-care. So it's just like triple duty for us. And so we really need to make sure that the self-care, the self-compassion, the kindness is there. So if you are speaking to yourself in a harsh language, you're gonna drain yourself a whole lot more. And remember, guys, that stress is going to get in the way of your immunity. So you really want to make sure that you're managing your stress. And everything that I told you today is about stress management. It's about turning on the rest and digest and turning off the fight or flight response. The fight or flight response that is wired to detect threat is switched on all the time. And so you can actually, if you look at your brain, our brains are plastic, okay? Well, they're not plastic, but our brains have neuroplasticity. So we didn't know this up until recently. We used to think that the brain would just be in complete development and nothing can happen after, childhood. That the brain is fully formed and it locks in. That's why they would say you can't, teach an old person new ways of being, or you can't, once I'm older, this is just how I am and there's nothing new that I can learn from this. But that's not true. We know now from neuroscience and neuroimaging that the brain can change throughout your life, up until your very last day. If you keep exercising certain parts of your brain, you can actually create new neural pathways. And so if we know that our wiring is negative, and our negative wiring is getting a whole lot of exercise these days due to every negative thing that we're getting through our social media platforms and all this like apocalyptic, like, oh my God, end of the world as we know it kind of news, it's really triggering off our fight or flight response, and we're getting a lot of exercise for the negative wiring in our brain. And we know from neuroscience that the neurons that fire together wire together. So if we start to fire positive neurons, if we start to look at things and we sit at the end of the day and we imagine, wow, let me think about all the things that went right today. Let me think about all the things that were really like awesome today. You actually are firing off the positive wiring in your brain. So all of a sudden, you have the negative, sure, we don't want to get rid of that, but we strengthen the positive. So imagine that you go to the gym and you're only lifting with your right arm, your right arm, your right arm, and all you get is exercise for the right arm. Your left arm is still there, but it's just not getting any exercise. And so just like you have the negative wiring in your brain, every person has the ability to be positive also. So you want to start firing off the positive. And I've actually told people that for the next 3 hours, we're not going to complain about anything. We're not going to say anything negative. We're only going to talk about the positive. And then you write it down in your gratitude journal or in your awesome journal. So my daughter has an awesome journal, and anything awesome that happens, she has to write it down. And she's starting to run out of awesome things. But you know what? She talked about the color blue, and it's a really awesome color, because if you didn't have the color blue, then it would be a really sort of like not a colorful world. So, okay, you know what? It's the color blue. So I want you to start writing down things that are awesome in your life. And then you start to exercise the positive wiring in your brain. And when that exercise starts to happen, what shifts inside of you is you go from being pessimistic, you go from being negative, you go from being sad, you go from being depressed to being a realistic optimist. And that's what we want. We want someone who is in touch with reality, but is full of hope and optimism. And that is something that you can actually start to exercise just by looking for things that are positive in your life. Imagine, it's just that easy. Where am I from? I am in Dubai, and my clinic is here. I'm a clinical psychologist for those of you guys who didn't join us. Can you talk about more on systems and support we need these days? So systems, I would say that anything that you are doing every day should become part of a routine and a system. So there should be a board, and so children, there's a lot of parents that are like, oh my God, my child is such a mess when he comes home, but at school he behaves really well. I don't understand. How come he's not behaving so well when he's home, but he's behaving so well when he's at school? Because in school, they have very clear expectations as to what they can expect every day. If you listen to your teachers and the teachers speaking to your kids, they go through a calendar every single morning. This is what we'll do at this time. This is what we'll do at this time. This is what we'll do at this time. This is what you need for this class. This is what you need for that class. So each thing should have a system in place. And so what I mean by system is having a routine. And you might need to do that on a Saturday for those of us who are tuned in from the UAE. I would say do it on a Saturday or the day before the school week begins for you. Do it on that day where you lay out your calendar for the rest of the week. And you say every morning we wake up at this time, we eat breakfast at this time. Now, what are we going to eat for breakfast? You write down the menu for the whole week. So not every day you're thinking, what am I going to eat for breakfast today? What are we going to eat for lunch today? What are we going to eat for dinner? It's exhausting. So that's what I mean by system. Have a system that, every 7 days you're going to eat pasta, or every 7 days you're gonna have biryani. Whatever it is that you want to eat, you find a rotation on that, and that way you have a system in place and you're not wondering every night what you're gonna do. You're gonna say that every 7 p.m. we're gonna have dinner together as a family. So everyone has to be showered and dressed and ready to go for dinner when not ready to go, but like ready to be at dinner around 6:30. So wrap it up and be inside, showered and ready. So this is what I mean by having a system. So you're not saying the same thing every single day, which is very draining. Of course, as a mother, you're going to end up saying the same thing every single day, but at least you know and they know what to expect. So you might just have to say it once or twice rather than like 7 times. If you don't have nannies and you don't have a full-time support system, then obviously this task is going to be a whole lot harder. And what you're going to need to do, especially if your children are young, you're going to have to really come up with some activities that you can do. Obviously, it's going to require some discussion with your employer as well, that can we shift the meetings to 30-minute meetings. If you're not able to do that, then I would ask your spouse for support, that for meetings that are very, very important, that he keeps an eye on the children. But you're going to have to get really creative and very engaging. And while I'm, anyone who knows me will tell you that I'm not a really big fan of like tech and children, but I'm not a big fan of entertainment technology, not educational technology. So if your child can stay engaged with some technology, I would lax the rules a little bit and have them engage with games that are educational, shows that are educational where they're learning something. And it's okay if they have a little bit more screen time than usual. It's just very important that that screen time be educational and not entertainment. I'm just reading some of these questions. Sorry, guys. Guilt. Someone asked about mother's guilt. I think it's a very real thing. I think something happens in the mind of a mother that no matter what, you're always going to have some element of guilt there. This is where self-compassion comes in, that you are doing the best you can. And remember that you want to prioritize your relationship with your children. You want to prioritize their mental health. You want to prioritize your mental health rather than getting an A+ in that class that they're doing, or making sure that they're at, getting everything right. You want to go from being perfect to being good enough. You want to be good enough, and then you want to really focus your priority on their mental health, your mental health, and your relationship. In the end, those are the only things that matter. Now remember, I have 4 children, and I constantly wonder, like, oh my God, I hope they are okay in school. I hope they pass. And I don't know some of the things that are being asked of me. I have a tutor that I try to get online, that sort of teaches them things that I might not be able to teach them on, so their Zoom sessions are happening on tutors with tutors online. However, there's still some things that, just do good enough. Just do good enough. And then focus on being physically fit, mentally fit, and relationally connected to each other. And so every time that guilt comes up that, I'm working, I could be helping with my kids, you know what? This is about everyone being in it together. So your work is important to you. It's important to your well-being. It's important to your health, your mental health. So we don't want to stop working and start working at homeschooling all the time. It's not going to be good for your relationship with your children if you give up so much of yourself and give it all, and then you're gonna expect a lot more from them. It's gonna build a lot more resentment. So just balance it both and go from being perfect to being good enough. Exercise, like I said, is an action. An action counteracts fear. And so there are times when I have people come into my clinic and they might say things like, they have had something traumatic happen to them. Maybe there was a death, maybe there was a trauma, maybe there was some breakup or a tragedy or something that they experienced. I actually say, when the mind and the heart feel like they're all over the place, get a grip of your body. Focus on building your immunity. Focus on building your physical strength. Just exercise every single day at the same time. Because when the mind and heart are out of control, get a grip of your body and then the mind will follow. And it does. It always does. And then this is why we have mindfulness-based stress reduction for people with chronic pain and fibromyalgia and, people that are not able to have their pain managed through medication. We use the mind. So when the mind doesn't listen, the body doesn't listen, we say focus on the mind. And this is where mind over matter comes in. That if the physical body is really feeling exhausted, then you go to the mental body and you try to control it through the mind. So it always follows. And so it's very important that you, if the mind feels out of control, focus on the body. When the body feels out of control, you focus on the mind. I know that this is a very difficult task for people whose part-time helpers are not available, and suddenly they have to cook and they clean and they teach. And this is why I am saying that when you're cooking and cleaning and teaching, this is a very difficult thing for people to do. And you are going through a difficult life experience. However, there is no way to change that. And so instead of focusing on what do I do, how do I do, I would just focus on what's the smallest step I need to take in all of these different, what are the expectations I need to adjust for myself. And maybe instead of cooking food, I'm gonna order, twice a week, or I'm gonna make pasta 3 times a week because that's fast for me to cook. And so there's no way to change the reality of the situation. This is the reality. We are all indoors and there is a global pandemic. There's nothing that we can do about it. This is not a choice. This is not something that, people are asking us to do because there's no good reason, We are in a global pandemic here, and our children are being asked to study from home, and we're asked to go from cooking and cleaning and working and teaching and all of these things that we have to do. But this is what is done. And so what's the smallest step I need to take in these little departments of mine, which is I'm a mother, I'm a teacher, I'm a worker, I'm a psychologist, I'm a wife. What's the smallest step I need to take? And where do I need to adjust my expectations, where my mental health and my relational health is the priority, not the task itself. All right, guys, I'm really conscious of the time. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to message me, direct message me on my account. I would be more than happy to actually answer any of your questions. And I think, remember, we are not trying to get rid of difficult feelings. We are not trying to get rid of the situation. We are trying to learn to live with this. We are learning to manage it. We are learning to master it. We are not trying to get rid of difficult emotions. I really hope that that point was made, that we want to learn to live with our difficult emotions. We want to make space inside of us, because a good life, a happy life, a fulfilling life is not going to have all these, positive days. There is going to be struggle. For a full life, for it to be a meaningful life, there is going to be pain. There is going to be sadness. So how do I make space for all feelings to exist and not just the super happy, super positive ones? And that time will come again too, where it will be all that again. But as we go through this period, can I make space for difficult feelings? And remember that when an emotion comes, it only lasts 90 seconds. So if a sad feeling is coming and I have a thought that releases a sad feeling, if I soften into that feeling and I just breathe the sadness out, it lasts 90 seconds. The chemical reaction is a 90-second. And it only gets longer when I feed that story. So when the negative thought comes and says, you know what, I really miss going to the gym, and then I just soften into it. So I say soft front, strong back. Soft front, strong back. And so how can I have a soft front where I breathe the emotion in and I release it? And then I don't hook onto the story and, oh my God, I miss going out too, and I miss this, and I miss that, and I miss that. That's what makes the sadness or anxiety get bigger. So you want to just focus on releasing the emotion, experiencing it, and letting it go. Soft front, strong back. And know that literally it will pass within 90 seconds if you don't feed that story. And then you say, I choose to feed gratitude. I choose to feed appreciation. I choose to feed joy in my life right now, rather than this negative thought. And so that's how you constantly are staying, more and more resilient. And this is something you can teach your children. This is something you can do with yourself. And I really recommend that you do that. And again, if you have any questions, guys, please let me know. It was a pleasure and honor to be here with you guys. And I wish you a very good evening and a very, stay well and stay safe.